All right, so this week I know we got one that we're both super excited about, and probably could ramble on for an hour straight without even trying to. So I'm gonna try and be quick here and hand it off to you. 'Cause we both got different perspectives and a couple different things to say about this guy. But it's Garland Jeffreys, Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider's the record. Garland Jeffreys is the artist. Yeah, there's so much to be said about this guy. One of the things I love about him that always appeals to me is he's definitely kind of a genre blender or bender, whichever you prefer. He kind of has elements of rock. I kind of hear like sort of influences of the Rolling Stones, early punk, kind of a little bit of a Mick Jagger vibe. You also can kind of tell that since this record was made in the 70s, there's some really cool uses of like basically like disco beats, kind of like Four on the Floor with the hats, except he writes these brilliant literary songs. It could be Allen Ginsberg or Walt Whitman or something. I mean, or William Carlos Williams, take your pick. I mean, they're just, you know, really incredibly lyrically. And then, in terms of all the grooves on this record in that peak vinyl analog golden era where like really before digital hit in the 80s and it was just all analog, but they really had it down, and they're pressing them onto records. And here you are, you can go to your local record store and have your very own copy and hear it analog to analog to analog into your ears. And what I love most about that I've been thinking about lately, because several of the things we've done so far, the Steve Young record was also from the 70s. We've had a few things, it's kind of been a running theme is just how good rhythm sections sound on vinyl. I'm not necessarily a believer that vinyl is unilaterally better than digital, and that's a whole other conversation. I think we both agree about that. That'd be a whole other episode to talk about. But one thing I will say generally, especially in the 70s, is there was something about bass and drums on vinyl and the way it was recorded, the way that it hit tape and it kind of gets naturally compressed, and the way that they couldn't really manipulate the drums quite in the same ways, like the way that snare drums sound. It's just kind of more warm, a little deeper usually. And that being said, the rhythm section on here, like we talked about, is unbelievable. Steve Gadd, look him up, look his bio if you don't know who he's played with. Steely Dan, among others. Anthony Jackson. One of the most famous songs on this record is Wild in the Streets, which was covered by the Circle Jerks, and we were just checking that out together today, which is just like a totally different version from what's on this record. It's loud. It's just like early, just great punk, like just distorted to the max. And then the other thing that kind of came up in our conversation was that we both kind of feel like even among the canon of artists that have been maybe a little bit overlooked, in this era of American music that we're talking about, or maybe just in the last century of American songwriters in general, I think both of us kind of feel like he should really be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's just so close to so many things. And also, his music is so full of American commentary and American culture. It's super literary. It's multiracial in a lot of ways. I mean, the record there behind you, which I also have a copy of over here, he's multiracial, as we've talked about. Anyway, he is definitely, I know, in both of our like kind of desert island hero collection, and is someone who just deserves wider recognition, I think, for sure. Like why these records haven't been repressed already is a mystery to me. But I know you had a phone call with him recently. But anyway, I just love to hear kind of what your thoughts are, like when you first discovered him, and how he's one of those artists that's so hard to describe, but when you hear it, it's just so great. And so I'm curious how you would describe him to someone who's never heard him before.
Wow, that's a lot to follow up. Garland Jeffreys, for me, is both the champ and the prophet, and just a rock and roll contender of the first order, and a very soulful person, both in his voice and in his demeanor, his musicality. And indeed, why he's not already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is an injustice or a confusing question. I don't understand. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you need to get off your butt. And some of you reissue labels, I feel the same. Why are these labels chasing the weird disco or the freak folk, which is all good. I like those genres, but a guy like Garland Jeffreys needs to be reissued and done right. Ghost Rider was just a blast in 1977 when it came out. It was such a unique and enticing mixture of rock, reggae, R&B, and of course the poetry or the street wisdom of his lyrics. He's all into the street. I mean, you listen to Wild in the Streets, and then as recently as 2011 in a comeback record, he was advising, poetically Obama to get streetwise, you know, because his daddy told him you got to be streetwise, and that's a thread that goes through all his records. He's just a bad mofo. I mean, these records are significant, and they're great fun to listen to. There's a couple of reggae cuts on this one, and it's got some special sauce or a little extra from Earl Wire Lindo, who was keyboard player for Marley, and a drummer named Winston Grannon. But other than their particular help on those two cuts, it's the most dreadliest of reggae ever recorded in America, in my opinion. There's some great British reggae. I love some Steel Pulse from the early days. But in terms of American reggae, you cannot find anything that drops it like Ghost Rider or I May Not Be Your Kind. I mean, that's for real. And I like what he's got to say. I mean, Garland came up kind of hard and came up, struggling with his identity, I think, and running the streets. I mean, this is 2021, but if he was born in 1943, then when he was 15, it was in the 50s, you know, half Puerto Rican, half black. I mean, things were different, and he had a lot of experiences, and he shares a lot of them in these records. In this record and his other records, American Boy and Girl, One-Eyed Jack, Don't Call Me Buckwheat. These records that rolled out one after the other for a while there were just, to me, life-changing for the rock and roll community. And he had connections. I mean, I think he was a pal of Lou Reed's for all the years. I think he knew those guys. I think he knew Lou before he got into became a part of the Velvet Underground. I mean, they go way back. And there is some of that Jagger swagger in the way Garland delivers a lyric or a song. I think he's got 10 times the voice of Jagger in terms of his intonation and his soulfulness. I mean, it's on. I mean, he brings it, whether he's bringing it down low and really subtle, or whether he's he's leaning on the mic stand doing the punk and the rock and roll thing. Garland brings it. Anyone who hasn't listened to this record should dip in. 1977, just amazing. And the interesting story is that Wild in the Street song was evidently recorded as part of the sessions maybe from his first record, which came out on Atlantic in 73. I don't know why it didn't go in. I don't know all the deep history on it, but it got dropped into this Ghost Rider in 1977. Brilliant song, wonderful song. And I love everything Garland Jeffreys has recorded. His this one over here, One-Eyed Jack, he's got a duo with Phoebe Snow, another great sort of, what genre am I in, magical performer, called Reelin'. You Got Me Reelin'. Just incredible track. All Garland's records are great, and I hope he sees this and gets a little bit of feels the love from South Carolina and East Nashville. And I'd like to call him again. Now's the time. Let us honor Garland Jeffreys and bring his brilliance to the fore and give him his just and due respect.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I remember listening to the Ghost Rider when I was in college, living in Brooklyn, where he was born. And every time I kind of dig it out again out of my record stack in the front room, I just fall in love with it. I couldn't agree with everything you said more at all. Just to recap, Steve Gadd, Anthony Jackson, what was the guy's name from the Bob Marley?
Wire Lindo.
Yes. And what you said about the reggae stuff, I just wanted to respond real quick before we go. Yeah. I mean, I was listening to this record. I'm like, is this just like drop dead amazing reggae or something that kind of takes you by surprise? Because there's other songs that kind of stray from that. But then with those two guys in it, and then with the songs that he writes, he doesn't really write like reggae in quotation songs. They're very literary. They're very kind of different. It's this really fascinating blend. I think if nothing else, this is a truly American artist that both of us are just so passionate about.
Well, let's quote the lines from Ghost Rider. They're on the back of the cover, but I don't need the back of the cover. It's used to live down on Ludlow Street, 1964. Once I was so innocent, and now I know the score. Wise up, America. Get some Garland in your life, Garland Jeffreys.
That's
Love
right.
you, man.
Go get the gatefold from your local record shop, or check it out on Spotify. But give Garland some love because he's amazing. And what more can you say?
Thanks for checking out our weekly web series, Deep Stacks, brought to you by Big X Music, a conversation each week with my dad, 40-plus year veteran of the music industry, founder of Horizon Records and concert promoter, where I sit down and we talk together about the music we're listening to. Please subscribe, leave us a comment down below, and join the conversation.